Welcome to English Lane, the channel where we learn English through powerful stories and timeless biographies. In today's video, we will explore one of the most inspiring lives in human history, the complete biography of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Through this video, you will learn not only about his early life, his challenges, and his mission, but also about his extraordinary character, leadership, and the timeless lessons we can all apply to our own lives. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of the world before Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his childhood and upbringing, the first revelations and the beginning of Islam, the struggles, migration, and battles faced by the Muslims, his role as a leader, statesman, and reformer, and finally, his lasting legacy that continues to guide millions of people around the world. This is not just a history lesson, it is a journey of faith, resilience, and transformation. So, sit back, listen carefully, and let us begin the inspiring story of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, step by step. The world before Prophet Muhammad. Before we begin the story of the Prophet himself, we must first understand the world into which he was born. The 6th century was a time of great chaos and darkness. Across the Arabian Peninsula and much of the world, the Roman and Persian empires were locked in endless wars. People were divided by class, tribe, and power. In Arabia, tribalism ruled society. Honor, wealth, and strength determined one's position in life. There was no central government. Instead, tribes often fought each other in bloody wars that lasted for decades. Social life was marked by injustice. Women were often treated as property with little to no rights. Newborn girls were sometimes buried alive, a cruel practice born from shame and poverty. Slavery was widespread, and the weak had no protection. Idolatry was the dominant religion. Hundreds of idols stood inside the Kaaba in Makkah, and people worshipped stones, trees, and even stars. At the same time, Arabia was also a place of trade and culture. Makkah, in particular, was a center of commerce, attracting merchants from all over. Poets and storytellers gathered at annual fairs where words were celebrated like treasures. But spiritually, people were lost. There was a deep hunger for truth, justice, and guidance. Many Arabs still remembered the ancient faith of Abraham and longed for a pure connection with the one true God. It was in this world of darkness and waiting that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was about to be born, bringing light, guidance, and mercy to all of humanity. The birth and childhood of Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born in the year 570 CE in the city of Makkah. This year is famously known as the Year of the Elephant, because in that year, a great army led by Abraha tried to attack the Kaaba with elephants. However, their plan failed when flocks of birds destroyed the army by the command of Allah. Muhammad's father, Abdullah ibn Abd al-Muttalib, had passed away before his birth. His mother, Amina bint Wahab, gave birth to him as an orphan. From the very beginning, his life was marked by trials, yet he was also surrounded by the love and protection of his family. As was the custom in Arabia, Muhammad was sent to the desert to be raised by a wet nurse, Halima Sadiya. During his years with Halima's family, extraordinary blessings were noticed. Their land, animals, and livelihood prospered unusually, and they knew that this child was special. When he was about 6 years old, his mother Amina passed away during a journey. Once again, Muhammad was left as an orphan. His grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, took care of him with deep affection. But 2 years later, his grandfather also passed away. and the young Muhammad came under the guardianship of his uncle, Abu Talib. Despite these hardships, the young boy grew up with remarkable character. He was known for his honesty, kindness, and thoughtfulness. Even as a child, he never bowed to idols, never engaged in wrongdoing, and always showed respect and care for others. This early part of his life shaped him to become the man who would later change the course of history, the youth and early adulthood. As Muhammad grew into his teenage years, he began working to support himself and his family. He worked as a shepherd, taking care of sheep. This simple and humble job gave him time to reflect, to develop patience, and to understand responsibility. Later, he worked as a merchant, joining caravans that traveled to Syria and other lands. In his business dealings, Muhammad stood out because of his honesty. While others cheated for profit, Muhammad always dealt fairly. His reputation grew so strong that people began to call him Al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy. At the age of 25, he was hired by a wealthy merchant woman named Khadija to manage her trade caravan. Muhammad did the job with excellence, bringing back more profit than expected. Khadija was deeply impressed by his character, integrity, and wisdom. Soon after, Khadija proposed marriage, and Muhammad accepted. Their marriage was filled with love, respect, and harmony. Khadija became not only his wife, but also his strongest supporter. Together, they built a family and raised children, including their beloved daughter, Fatima. Muhammad's youth and adulthood were marked by purity, wisdom, and dignity. While society around him was drowning in corruption and idolatry, he stood apart, a man of principle and trust. The search for truth. As the years passed, Muhammad became more and more disturbed by the corruption, injustice, and idol worship around him. He longed for truth, for peace, and for a way to guide his people. He began spending long periods of time in meditation and reflection. His favorite place was the cave of Hira, a quiet cave in the mountains near Makkah. There he would stay alone for days, thinking deeply about the Creator, life, and the condition of humanity. This period of searching prepared his heart and mind for the greatest event in history, the beginning of revelation. The first revelation. At the age of 40, while meditating in the cave of Hira, Muhammad, peace be upon him, experienced the event that would forever change his life, the first revelation. One night, the angel Gabriel, appeared before him and commanded, "Read." Iqra. Muhammad, unlettered and unable to read or write, replied, "I cannot read." The angel repeated the command and embraced him tightly. Finally, Jibril revealed the first verses of the Quran. "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know." Terrified and shaken, Muhammad rushed back to his home, his heart trembling. Khadija comforted him, reassured him, and took him to her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, a learned Christian scholar. Waraka confirmed that what Muhammad experienced was indeed divine revelation and that he was chosen as the final prophet of God. This marked the beginning of his mission, the early call to Islam. At first, Muhammad shared the message of Islam quietly with his closest family and friends. The first to accept Islam were his beloved wife Khadija, his young cousin Ali ibn Abi Talib, his loyal friend Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, and his servant Zayd ibn Haritha. Slowly, a small group of believers began to form. They were called Muslims, meaning those who submit to the will of Allah. For the first 3 years, the call to Islam was private. The believers would gather secretly to pray and learn the Quran. Their faith grew, but so did the danger. Eventually, Muhammad received the command to call people openly. He stood on the hill of Safa in Makkah and called the tribes together. He warned them of the day of judgment and invited them to worship only Allah. This open call shook the society of Makkah. Many rejected the message, but a few brave souls embraced Islam, knowing they would face persecution. The persecution of the Muslims. As Islam spread, the leaders of Quraysh became furious. They saw Muhammad's message as a threat to their power, their wealth, and their idols. They began to persecute the Muslims in cruel ways. Some were beaten and tortured, others were starved, mocked, or imprisoned. The family of Yasir and Sumayya suffered greatly. Sumayya became the first martyr of Islam, killed for her faith. Despite the suffering, the Muslims remained steadfast. They refused to give up their belief in the one true God. Muhammad himself was protected to some extent by his uncle Abu Talib, but he too faced insults, mockery, and hatred. Still, he continued to preach with patience and wisdom. The migration to Abyssinia. As the persecution grew worse, the Prophet advised some of his followers to seek refuge in a safe land. He told them to migrate to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, where a just Christian king, known as the Negus, ruled. A group of Muslims, including Uthman ibn Affan and his wife Ruqayya, the daughter of the Prophet, made the journey. The Quraysh tried to bring them back, but the Negus refused to hand them over after hearing the truth about Islam. This migration was a turning point. It showed that Islam was not limited to Makkah and that its message could spread to other lands. The Year of Sorrow. After years of calling people to Islam, the Prophet, peace be upon him, faced one of the most painful periods of his life. This period is known as the Year of Sorrow. In the same year, two of his strongest supporters passed away. His beloved wife, Khadijah, who had been his partner, his comfort, and the first believer in Islam. His uncle Abu Talib, who had protected him from the enemies of Quraysh, even though he himself never accepted Islam. With the loss of these two, the Prophet was left vulnerable. The Quraysh increased their hostility against him. Seeking new opportunities, the Prophet traveled to the city of Ta'if to invite its people to Islam. Instead of welcoming him, they mocked him, rejected him, and even sent their children to throw stones at him. He was wounded and humiliated. Yet in that moment of pain, the Prophet turned to Allah with a heartfelt prayer, asking only for His mercy and guidance. This showed his patience, humility, and unshakable trust in God. The night journey, Isra and Miraj. At this time of grief, Allah blessed the Prophet with a miraculous journey known as Isra and Miraj. One night, the angel Jibril took the Prophet from Makkah to Jerusalem in a miraculous journey called Isra. From there, he was taken up through the heavens in the Miraj. In this journey, he met previous prophets like Ibrahim, Abraham, Musa, Moses, and Isa, Jesus. He witnessed the beauty of paradise and the horrors of hell. Finally, he was brought into the presence of Allah in a way beyond human understanding. During this journey, Allah gave the command of 5 daily prayers, Salah, a gift and obligation for the Muslim community. This miraculous event strengthened the Prophet and his followers, reminding them that their mission was supported by divine power. The migration to Medina. As the years passed, life in Makkah became unbearable for the Muslims. The Quraysh plotted to kill the Prophet and end his mission once and for all. At this critical time, Allah opened a new door, a group of people from the city of Yathrib, later known as Medina, accepted Islam and pledged to support the Prophet. They invited him and his followers to come and live among them. When the Quraysh learned of this plan, they plotted to assassinate the Prophet. But Allah protected him. On the night of the escape, the Prophet's cousin, Ali ibn Abi Talib, slept in his bed to trick the assassins. Meanwhile, Muhammad secretly left with his companion, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq. They hid in the cave of Thawr for several days, while their enemies searched everywhere. At one point, the Quraysh came so close that only a spider's web and a dove's nest at the cave entrance kept them from being discovered. Abu Bakr was terrified, but the Prophet reassured him, saying, "Do not be afraid. Allah is with us." Finally, they made the journey safely and entered Medina. The people welcomed them with joy, singing, and open arms. This migration, known as the Hijra, marked the beginning of a new chapter in Islamic history. It was so significant that later, the Islamic calendar itself was set to begin from this event. Building the Muslim community in Medina. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, arrived in Medina, his first mission was to unite the people and build a strong, peaceful community. The first step was the construction of the Masjid al-Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque. It was not only a place of prayer, but also a center for learning, guidance, and community decisions. The Prophet established brotherhood between the Muhajirun, the migrants from Makkah, and the Ansar, the helpers from Medina. This bond of faith was stronger than blood ties. They shared their homes, wealth, and food with each other, creating an example of unity. The Prophet also created a constitution for Medina, which included Muslims, Jews, and other groups. It guaranteed freedom of religion, justice, and protection for all citizens. This was one of the earliest written agreements of its kind in history. Step by step, Medina transformed into a city of faith, justice, and equality. The battles of Badr, Uhud, and Khandaq. Although the Muslims were safe in Medina, the Quraysh of Makkah could not accept their success. This led to several major battles. The Battle of Badr, 624 CE. The Muslims, only 313 in number, faced a Quraysh army of more than 1,000. Against all odds, the Muslims were victorious. This victory strengthened their faith and showed that Allah supports those who trust Him. The Battle of Uhud, 625 CE. The Quraysh sought revenge and attacked the Muslims near Mount Uhud. At first, the Muslims were winning, but some archers disobeyed the Prophet's command and left their positions. The Quraysh seized the opportunity and struck back. Many Muslims were killed, including the Prophet's beloved uncle Hamza. The Prophet himself was wounded. This battle taught the Muslims the importance of discipline and obedience. The Battle of Khandaq, 627 CE. Years later, a large coalition of Quraysh and other tribes marched to destroy Medina. The Muslims, advised by Salman the Persian, dug a trench around the city, a tactic unknown in Arabia. The enemy could not cross, and after weeks of siege, they withdrew in defeat. This was a turning point that showed the growing strength of the Muslims. The Treaty of Hudaybiyyah. In 628 CE, the Prophet and his companions set out for Makkah to perform the pilgrimage, Umrah. The Quraysh, however, blocked their way. After long negotiations, both sides agreed to a peace treaty at a place called Hudaybiyyah. According to the treaty, the Muslims would return to Medina without performing Umrah that year. They would be allowed to return the following year. Both sides would agree to a 10-year truce. Although some Muslims felt disappointed, the Prophet accepted the treaty with wisdom. This truce allowed Islam to spread peacefully, and many people embraced the faith during this time. What seemed like a setback turned out to be a great victory for Islam. The Conquest of Makkah. 2 years after the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, the Quraysh violated the agreement by attacking an allied tribe of the Muslims. This betrayal gave the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the reason to march toward Makkah with a large army of 10,000 Muslims. When they entered Makkah, there was no major battle. Instead, the Prophet declared a general amnesty. He forgave even those who had once been his greatest enemies. Standing before the Kaaba, he removed the idols one by one, declaring, "Truth has come, and falsehood has vanished." For the first time in centuries, the Kaaba was purified for the worship of Allah alone. The people of Makkah, moved by the Prophet's mercy and forgiveness, accepted Islam in large numbers. This peaceful conquest was one of the greatest achievements in history, showing that true victory comes through compassion, not revenge. The Farewell Pilgrimage. In the 10th year after the migration, the Prophet performed his only Hajj, known as the Farewell Pilgrimage. Over 100,000 Muslims gathered with him, listening carefully to his final sermon. In his sermon, he emphasized the sanctity of life, property, and honor, equality of all human beings regardless of race or tribe, the rights of women and the importance of treating them kindly, the obligation to hold firmly to the Quran and the Sunnah. He declared, "O people, no prophet or messenger will come after me, and no new faith will emerge. I leave behind me 2 things, the Quran and my Sunnah. If you hold on to them, you will never go astray." This sermon remains one of the most powerful declarations of human rights and universal values in history. The passing of the Prophet and his legacy. Soon after returning to Medina, the Prophet fell ill. His sickness lasted for several days. During his final moments, he was surrounded by his family. His beloved wife Aisha was by his side. The last words on his blessed lips were, "O Allah, the highest companion." In the year 632 CE, at the age of 63, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, passed away. The entire Muslim community was struck with grief. His companion Abu Bakr comforted them, reminding them that while the Prophet had passed, the message of Islam and the guidance of Allah would remain forever. The Prophet left behind no wealth, no palace, and no treasure. What he left was far greater: the Quran, the final revelation of Allah, his Sunnah, his teachings and example, and a united community of believers who would carry the message of Islam across the world. His life remains the perfect example of mercy, justice, patience, and leadership. To this day, billions of people continue to follow his guidance and find peace in his message. You have now listened to the complete story of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, from his birth to his passing, from struggle to triumph, from sorrow to everlasting legacy. His life teaches us faith, courage, forgiveness, and hope. If you found this video inspiring, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to English Lane for more powerful stories that help you learn English while discovering the wisdom of history.